Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Napa Valley Wine Academy WSET Level 2 Wine Info Session and Student Panel Discussion. My name is Desiree Harrison Brown, and I am one of the Level 2 instructors at Napa Valley Wine Academy. I'm really excited to be here to moderate this conversation. For those of you who aren't familiar, WSET stands for Wine and Spirit Education Trust, and it is globally recognized wine education program that gives certifications to enthusiasts and professionals. Today's discussion is here to help you get a better understanding of what it's like to take WSET Level 2 with Napa Valley Wine Academy and what to expect. We have an awesome panel here with four of my previous WSET Level 2 students, and they will share their experience and insight with you. We do want this to be interactive, so I encourage you to participate in the chat and ask questions. Although the first part of the discussion will be me moderating and asking questions, but we'll leave plenty of time to get to your questions in the end. Thank you all for joining us, and let's get started. I want to start by introducing our panelists today. First, we have Will Sarvis, who took WSET Level 2 as a wine enthusiast and passed with distinction. His ultimate goal is to become a winemaker and importer, and he's currently the president of the DMV chapter of the Hugh Society. Thanks for being here, Will. We also have with us Matt Graves, who's a former retail wine manager and now working in sales for a distributor in Knoxville, Tennessee. His passion for wine was sparked by traveling to Italy, and he hopes to be in the wine industry for the long haul. Thanks for being here, Matt. Kisa Moss is another one of our panelists today, and she enjoys exploring wine and expanding her palate and savoring sparkling wine on the weekends. She has a business offering accessories and wine education and events. She is WSET Level 1 certified and is planning to take her WSET2 exam very soon. Kisa. And then finally, we have Teresa, who is a mom of two. She has a 19 and a 14-year-old, and she's a volunteer extraordinaire. She loves learning about wine, and she has completed levels 1 and 2 with Napa Valley Wine Academy and has passed both with distinction. So thank you, Teresa, for being here. I'm so excited to get this conversation kicked off. And I'll go ahead and throw out the first question. Several of you have taken WSET Level 1 with Napa Valley Wine Academy. So I'd love to hear how you decided you were ready to take the next step and enroll in WSET Level 2. So I will throw the first question to Matt.
So I actually jumped straight to level 2. I did a little bit of studying on my own before evaluating level 1 and 2, and felt that I might be able to take level 2 from a education background. So I believe Teresa might have be a better person to answer this question.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. It brings up a really good point that if you do have a kind of foundational knowledge of wine, you do have the ability to skip to level 2. And there are some resources on the Napa Valley Wine Academy. I think there's a quiz there that you can take to gauge if you are ready or not to skip to level 2. There's also an article that I have written about the differences between the two levels. So thank you for bringing that up. So I'll throw the question now to Teresa. After taking level 1, how long did you wait, and how did you decide you were ready for level 2?
I took level 1. Actually, I took it in December of 21, I think it was. Yes, because last year was. I'm still like figuring out what year is what. So I was like, you know what? Let's just jump in. I learned that I ask a lot of questions when I go wine tasting. So I'm just a curious wine taster, and I love learning about wine. So the level 1 was was actually kind of easy for me, so to speak. And so I wanted to take level two, and just timing with schedule and stuff like that, I wasn't able to do it until last summer. So I took about 6 months, I think, before I decided to do it. I also wanted to wait and make sure that I did pass. I wasn't too arrogant about, passing the level one exam. But I did pass that. And then once my schedule fit, I went ahead and did it. And I took the class last summer, and it was level two was a lot of review of level one, but it went into more in-depth conversations and learning about the tasting a little bit more in depth and things like that, and obviously learning more about the different regions and how the wines were grown, and like where they're grown, like the different soils and things like that.
Yeah, you bring up another really great point about the waiting period between getting exam results. It does take about 8 to 12 weeks. And I always recommend students to take the exam, see how you feel. And if you feel really good about it, then you can absolutely go ahead and register for level two before you get your exam scores, just because that waiting period is kind of long, but you definitely have to use your judgment with that there. Kisa, I want to ask you, were you surprised at all about the difference between level one and level two in the amount of information and the detail that it went into?
Yes, I was, because I am not the best test taker. So I like studied I really was intensely studying level one. I was like, okay, maybe I put too much time into it, because I was like, I passed really well. Like I scored really high score. And then when I got to level two, I was like, okay, wow, they are really taking it up a notch. I was turning those pages and I got really intimidated. Like I was scared. I was like, how am I gonna remember all these varietals? Like it was intense. But I was glad that I took level one, because that gave me my foundation. A lot of the information I did know, but it made me feel a little bit more confident about some of those primary aromas and flavors, and just things that, because you were my teacher in both of them. So just things that was reviewed in there. So it definitely helped. So it was good though.
Awesome. So you've signed up for level two, you're getting into the information. I'd love to hear from you, Will. What was your study routine? Did you have a plan for how you were approaching the course, and what study methods did you use?
I think coming in, I just knew that I wanted to pass with distinction. So I kind of, like Keisha said, I just overstudied, and I spent a lot of time just reading. I read before the class started. I read the entire book before the course started, and then read it over in class, and then took notes. I wrote extensive notes. I think I might have missed like maybe a paragraph from the whole book in my notes. So it was pretty intense. But that's how I kind of study. I rarely have to study for anything, but this kind of stuff was important for me to understand it and make sure that I remembered it. So I made sure I wrote it down, and that was how I retained the information.
So taking notes was really a useful study tool for you, I see. And also, you do get your material a little bit ahead of time. So I love that you kind of got a head start and read even before the class started. That's awesome. Matt, what about you? What were some of your study tools that you found really effective?
Yeah, so similar to Will, kind of hit the ground running once I got my study materials. And one thing that they kind of make you aware of is like, though other wine books are great tools, they kind of want you to really focus on the textbook that they send you, just so that like there's no variance in the information given. And I think that was important to me because I had the wine folly book, and that's what I'd read before. And so, and with there's other books out there too, like a wine Bible and whatnot. So um, that was for me just kind of diving into that textbook. I have a photographic memory. So for me, like maps was a big thing, and then also like um, I don't know. I guess those that out there that have one can relate. It's just like reading and kind of remembering where it is on the page, like the information, and so you can kind of just
Mm-hmm.
like trying to, when you're this not to jump too far ahead, but when taking the test, it's okay. Where was that? And so it's more of um, anyways, not to get too far into the weeds, but then just writing stuff down, like reading it, writing it down, reading it, writing it down, really helped me.
I love that, and you are making me so proud. You were definitely listening. One of the main things that I say is all of the exam questions come from the WSET Level 2 textbook and the online material. So everybody taking the class is probably a wine enthusiast and has their favorite wine books, but you'll notice as you're studying and looking at different sources, sometimes they describe things a little bit differently. So you want to make sure that you are familiar with the WSET way of speaking. You'll recognize the questions. The flavor descriptors will be absolutely accurate when you go to take the exam. So thank you for bringing that up, Matt. Teresa, I'd love to hear from you about what it was like to manage your studying while also having two kids and volunteering. How did you balance it all, and what was your study plan like? All right.
Hi.
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry. I actually, my daughter went to college last summer, so it was her freshman year. So I only had to deal with one kid and stuff like that. But that was kind of crazy in between it all. And I would just do it while I was while they were at home, or sorry, while I was at home, they were at school. I would take time and I would just study the books. I made flashcards because that worked for me. And I took those quizzes that were at the end of the chapters. I don't know how many times, because I was determined, as well as everybody else on here, I was going to get distinctions again. And I was going to get 100% if that was possible. And so I would just take it until I did. And the questions are very similar to what the actual exam is. So that was very helpful knowing that.
Yeah, it's great that you brought up flashcards, because I know flashcards is one way that a lot of people study. Me personally, I'm not a huge flashcard person, and I prefer flashcards that are already completed for you. So the skills and drills that Napa Valley Wine Academy is really helpful. So Kisa, tell me a little bit about how you use the skills and drills to help study.
Okay, so that portion is like really good. I didn't realize it, and I followed directions and waited until I finished the whole course before you skip and start doing that, because I was tempted. But I like how it breaks it down, because it starts from the grape and then it goes to the region. It starts in the labeling. That really helps, because I do my own flashcards and I did not separate it that way. And so I was like, okay, this really helps you to see, like, do you really have the information? Do you really understand it? So I really like, I'm still studying. So yeah. I enjoy that part for sure. It's the best. And I still use my own flashcards too. So
Yeah, a little bit of both. That's great.
mm-hmm.
What did you all find that was the most challenging part of the material, whether it was the different regions or understanding the winemaking processes? I will start with you. What did you find was the most challenging for you as you were studying?
For me, it was remembering the different climate influences. And so, like, remembering where the breeze is coming from in certain regions, or who has cloud cover or mountain cover that's preventing rain, things like that. It was kind of intense. I ended up making an Excel spreadsheet that was really long, and I probably wish I didn't spend as much time on that and found another way to do it. But that was probably the most intense for me. And then after that would be like kind of remembering some of the less common grapes that we went over, and then the material on port. So that would be that.
What about you, Matt? What did you find was the most challenging? And I know you said you sort of have a photographic memory. So did that help you at all with the really challenging parts of the course?
It definitely helped with the maps. That kind of helped with like learning the regions and the appellations, just remembering kind of where they are. To echo what Will said, some of the lesser known grapes just had to kind of refamiliarize myself, and I came up with like some just kind of, I don't know, very like almost like gimmicky reminders of this what this region is and what grape it is, and just kind of did weird rhymes on my head to kind of remember what was what. Um, and anyways, they're really geeky and almost would be embarrassing to say, but just kind of like had those in my head, and then just ways of remembering, and then kind of going back to, and it's not really cheating because everything comes from the textbook, but it's like, okay, if we're talking about like Australia, okay, like what specific grapes are they really focusing on, so that I can just kind of remind myself, and kind of, if I'm in a tight spot, be okay, well, they only talked about these, let's just say four or whatever, and then kind of narrow it down from there. Um, yeah.
Awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about the tasting portion of the course. We do taste wines and you get a wine kit with the level 2 course, but for the exam, there is a no tasting portion. The exam is all multiple choice. I want to hear from you all about how the tasting portion helped you commit the material to memory, or how did it help you at all with the overall study process? So Kisa, I'll start with you.
Okay, so for the tasting portion, I mean, I'm still drinking, so I went out and made sure I bought these varietals. I had to look for them because some of them I had honestly never heard of, and I was like, I don't even know what this is, but it sounds amazing based on what I'm reading about it. So I would come downstairs and have about 3 different varietals and have my book because that's what it suggested, and then just make sure to taste and sip and make notes and get out my SAT tasting sheet to make sure I'm practicing that along with it, and really keeping it immersing it into my brain as I'm tasting so I can remember, because that helps. Because back to like what Matt was saying about with your memory, that helps me. I have to like experience some things. So just the experience alone helped me with the tasting.
Awesome. What about you, Teresa?
The tasting, I think, helped learning, like, even just the different descriptions of, like, I need that wheel. I need to carry that wheel everywhere with me now. I've become a little dependent upon it. But the big thing for me was like when we did like the umami and the lemon and the salt, and how that changed it. I could remember, like, on the testing, it's like, okay, hold on, this one, all right, I remember sucking on that salt, and it went to this way. And so it did help to remember the stuff, because like Keisha was just saying, like, the experience, for me, I'm also the same way, where you have to experience it to remember it.
I love that. What about you, Will? How did tasting kind of help you with the material?
Uh, for me, I think the one that stood out the most was probably the Beaujolais, and how the characteristics kind of popped once you actually tasted it. Aside from that, I think it just helped like just build the confidence of me as a taster. So like being in the class and having that environment where everyone's tasting and pulling out notes of the different wines that we're drinking, I think that just being able to say, okay, yeah, we're all kind of on the same path here. I'm feeling this. I can taste these notes too. So I think that it helped in that way, just building confidence, and then getting me ready for level 3.
I love that. Looking ahead. That's great. We talked about our most challenging part of the course, but I'd love to hear what was maybe your favorite part of taking the class, and maybe what was your favorite subject to learn about. Matt, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think actually my answer kind of piggybacks off of kind of the last conversation. I really enjoyed the tasting portion of it, and having the webinar aspect of it, because we're all doing just like this video, if you want to show your face, and we're all doing it at the same time. And like, there, just so you guys know, like when you're typing in your descriptors, it doesn't say, "Hey, Matt thinks that this, tastes like this. What an idiot!" Like, it's like, no, it's like everything is like anonymous, and it's populated in the screen, and those that, hey, this is I taste oak or cherry, whatever, it gets bigger and bigger. So it's kind of like there is some affirmation and confirmation. It's like, okay, what I'm smelling, everyone else is too. And that builds your confidence. So that was really cool. I wasn't entirely sure how that was going to work, but when I got my shipment of like sample bottles, I was like, oh, this is going to be like the coolest thing ever. I want to go buy my bottles alone on my own. As far as the easiest part, that's an interesting question. I think it's we all have things in life that kind of come natural to us, and I think just being able to talk the language of wine and just kind of understand where um, well, I'm not sure where I would be going with that, but I think it was just kind of the flow of it was just kind of easy. It made it easy. It's a very structured schedule and a very structured environment. So to me, that allowed it to be easier as opposed to simply like, here's some wine, do it on your own, figure it out, and then you'll take your test and hope you do well. Like, it's very interactive and involved, and to me, that made everything easier.
I want to talk about the exam a little bit. I know most of you have taken the exam. Did you have any like exam day rituals, and what was your initial feeling after you took the exam? Go ahead, Will. I see that laugh.
Yeah, I think I probably had a small heart attack on the day of the exam, just like, panicking, getting ready. I think I read over the book or skimmed over the book that morning, and then I went over the Excel sheet, went through my notes a bunch of times, and just kind of tried to cram as much into my memory as I could that wasn't, sticking, and anything that I thought might pop up, I just went over it until I got it. So it was a very intense day. I probably didn't breathe through the first 20 questions.
And then how did you feel after the exam was over? Did you feel like the exam was very similar to the things that you had studied? Did you feel good after the exam?
Yeah, after the exam, I felt pretty confident. There were maybe like three or four questions that I was like, I don't know if I got that right, but I went back immediately after the exam and went into the book and was like, all right, I got that wrong, this one right. So it felt good. I felt very confident in where I was going to score, but I definitely still had the anxiety of wanting to officially get that score back. So yeah, it was fun. I had to skip a few questions, so that's another thing that I think was important because I didn't want to get stuck and lose flow. So I just kind of skipped over a few questions that weren't like really sticking in my head, or if I wasn't sure, I would flag it and then, go through a few where I was just, knowing for sure and was just run through those questions. And then I would come back and kind of debate and think about the other questions for a little bit and give my best answer on them.
Yeah, no, that's great. What about you, Teresa? I know you had set out to pass with distinction. So, how are you feeling test day? What was your initial reaction after the exam?
My I was actually more nervous, I think, about the actual you know, being in a room, make sure that you have the camera on. Like that was actually more stressful for me, making sure that I was not going to, have something thrown away. Like I was like more worried about that was going to get all like tossed out because, I didn't have the camera on me correctly or something. But that said, you have plenty of time to go through the questions. They're all multiple choice, so that kind of is an easy one too, because like he said, you can skip questions if you're not 100% sure and go back. You don't have to submit, and that's it. Um, so I went through it. I do think in some ways I was like, wow, that was faster than I thought it was. And I think that's just me and how I go through it. Cause I did the same thing. I was like, all right, I'm going to like go through all my stuff really quick right before I get in there. Cause I locked myself in a room. Nobody's allowed in, leave me alone. Um, but I felt okay. I didn't feel as confident after the second one. That I did on the first one, just because it was a little bit more challenging. There was more things that I didn't like confidently know. Maybe I could have waited another week or so to schedule my exam, but I'm also like for me, the longer I waited, the more I was almost going to forget the stuff. It's like I would rather, schedule my exam soon after the classes are done, and just, push through and know that the knowledge is all right there. So I got like the highest one on the first exam. The second exam, I still had distinctions, but it was the next level down. So I was like, okay, but I didn't do quite as well as I wanted to, but I still passed. I mean, you pass with what, a 55 or something?
Yeah,
So
so Um, yeah, no, that's awesome. There's always a little bit of nerves on test day. There's a ton of material in the actual course that kind of help you feel a little bit more at ease with the technology and making sure that your room is set up properly. So definitely reviewing that information is a good idea so you can just focus on the actual content and do as best as you can. Matt, I want to hear from you. How long after the class ended did you sign up to take the exam? And then how are you feeling? And what did you feel after the exam?
Yeah, I'm same. Same with Teresa. I think maybe Will said the same thing. I did not want an extended period of time to go by to where I could, where it wasn't fresh on my mind. Um, so I scheduled it. I think I gave myself, I can't remember exactly, maybe a couple weeks. It was like just to kind of, or maybe, yeah, it was probably a couple weeks, just to like review, take some time alone, kind of go over um, some of the wines that we sampled, and then buying maybe some from the store that resemble that, and then kind of just doing that at home. Um, I I'm a very like when I take a test. I wouldn't say I'm the greatest test taker in the world, but I kind of flew through it, and it was I think you get an hour if I remember correctly, and I think like 25 minutes in, I was like, hold on, I answered everything, but I was like, let's. But it was nice because then I had like about 40 minutes to go back and like look over, and that's another thing too. Like once you lock in an answer, I should say once you put an answer, you're not locked in, so you are allowed to go back and make changes if you want to. I'm a big gut feeling guy, and so I don't like to change that often. There were really just a couple that I ended up swapping, and to my understanding, you won't ever see you don't get to see it question by question your results. You just get a score, unless I just didn't see it. But but I think some of those that I tweaked helped me, and I ended up with distinction, and it was cool. But there were, same with Will said, I finished and I was like, oh, I like there could have been 5 of those, 7 of those that it could have gone either way. Um, but yeah, I knew that I passed. It was one of those moments where I was like, okay, I don't have to worry about that, but I want to pass with a distinction. So I was like, there's merit and the distinction, and so I was like, that's the only thing. I was like, well, if there was, I forget the number, but anyways, long story short, I felt good about passing, but felt better when I got my score.
Yes. After the waiting group of students here you all see. So now that the class is over, most of you have or all of you have finished the class, most of you have gotten your scores. I want to hear about how the class has helped you either in your professional career or even in your personal endeavors. Kisa, I'll start with you.
Okay, so I definitely feel more confident since I've taken level 2, and everybody comes to me with wine questions. I'm like, look, I'm not the wine person, but maybe in my circle I am. Like, what should I do with this? I'm like, well, what are you going to pair it with? And then my brain just kind of goes into this encyclopedia, I feel like, and just all this information starts coming out, and I'm like, I did not know I was gonna go that far with that. You just asked me what kind of red wine. I am so sorry to vomit on you. So I definitely can. If someone asks me a question, it's a long answer, and then if I'm like in a store, I will just start talking to strangers and just asking like, "Oh, hey, what are you gonna do with that? Oh, do you drink that often?" I'll just be in the store talking to people, and like, "You work here?" No. I'm just a wine person. I saw that bottle of white. I didn't know if you wanted that or you might want to do this one down here. That's me. So I'm definitely a wine person. So I enjoy talking about wine. So it's definitely up my ante on wine information for sure. So a lot more confidence and just want to keep going.
Yes, definitely a boost of confidence. I see there. That's
Yes.
awesome. What about, well, I know you have some big lofty goals and you also are the president of the Hughes Society. How has the exam results and also taking the class helped you?
I mean, in similar ways, I'm also a lot more confident now in my wine knowledge. I have a lot of friends and people in the community that ask me a lot of questions about wine, so I've always felt it was my responsibility to kind of make sure I knew what I was talking about when I'm giving out information. So it helps to actually have a little bit of pedigree to back that up now. um, and I don't think I would have felt confident taking the position with the Hughes Society had I not had this level 2 under my belt. So I think it helped in that way, just being able to be confident around other wine professionals and people in the wine community to be like, hey, I can be in this space with you guys, and I feel confident and comfortable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Matt, you have a pretty cool story. After taking level 2, you kind of switched completely into the wine industry. So talk to me a little bit about that transition and now your new role. How has the certification helped you?
Yeah. As you alluded to, I didn't have a background in wine. The background doesn't matter, but it's just not privy to the conversation. But I really wanted to get into it. I knew that having a certification would hopefully set me apart from the rest of the field, or applicants rather. And I had a couple of connections, and it just kind of worked out to where I got a call and they're like, "Hey, we have this opportunity. We're opening up this 25,000 square foot store, and it's like, do you want to be the wine manager?" And I was like, well, "Let's go." So that was really cool, and I knew that, and it was an empty room, so kind of we built it out. I think we had 2,500 SKUs, 2,500 wines in the store, and so that was an amazing opportunity to kind of build that out. The I knew being in retail was a stepping stone. I knew I didn't want to do it for the long haul, but I knew that you learn what the customer is looking for, at least in that particular market. And so you really gain insight because we all like the coolest wine in the world, but maybe the customers don't. So you're able to discern what they're looking for. And then an opportunity came up with one of the distributors in sales, and I knew that's kind of what I wanted to do next. And every rep that I was buying from was like, "You belong on this side. This needs to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it needs to happen." And an opportunity opened up, and I took it. And I've got um, some aspirations to kind of keep going along with the steps in front of that. But where I'm at now, I'm really enjoying it. And I just to circle back, I do not believe I would have had these opportunities if not for the WSET Level 2 certification. It just wouldn't have happened.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that story. I want to hear from you all. Is everybody thinking about maybe going to level 3? Teresa, talk to
Yes.
me about where you are and if you're interested in moving on to level 3. That was one of the questions from the chat.
I would be interested in it. I've done both of the other ones online, but level 3 sounds to me like it's definitely more in depth, and I don't know if it's more intense. And I kind of want to go in person to Napa, because it's a good excuse to go up north. But I don't know. Right now, I just haven't figured out timing wise. When can I do this? It is a longer, even an online course if we do it. So, yes, I would like to pursue it at some point. I just don't know if I'm going to do it in person or if I'm going to do it online. But I do want to do it, just to gain more knowledge. My husband keeps going, all right, so what are you doing with all this now that you keep taking these? And, I haven't, I am a stay at home mom, so I haven't figured out yet what I'm going to do with it. But I feel like this is a nice little back pocket kind of thing to have, especially as my kids are getting older and I'm going to have to unretire and probably, do something with myself that is fun, something for
I mean,
me,
wine is a great second career, so I love that for
right?
you.
Well, honestly, I would be happy if I was just at a tasting room and pouring and talking to people, but where we are, there aren't the tasting rooms aren't as easy. Temecula is about an hour away from us, so I don't really. That would be too far out of my bubble.
Awesome. I want to do a quick speed round of one question before we get to the questions in the chat. If you were talking to somebody and they wanted advice about taking level 2, what would be your quick advice to them about taking the class? Kisa, you first.
Okay, I would say definitely take it. Study every day. Set aside some time. Link up with someone in your group and connect with your instructor as much as you can. Steady.
Awesome. Will, what about you? What would be your advice?
Yeah, I would say just go for it. It's a nice step to have, to further yourself in a wine career or just to have, some more knowledge about a passion that you have. It's a no-brainer. Take the class, take it seriously. Make sure you have time for it, but go for it.
Matt?
I'd say make it a priority. It's not it's one of those that you have to make time for, as everyone has said. That would be the only thing. I mean, if you should do it, go for it, but don't wait to the last minute to study.
And then Teresa, what would be your advice?
I would say go ahead and go for the class. Definitely stick with the timeline and make sure that if you're doing it online, make sure you're meeting live with the weekly tastings and stuff. I actually had to do one of them. I wasn't able to make it and I did the recording and it definitely wasn't the same. So if it's at all possible, definitely do the live versions because it is interactive and tasting by yourself and going, ooh, that smells like cherry. No, you know. And if you can, get Desiree as your teacher.
Hey,
Thank you for
hey.
that. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Oh, that is great advice from you all. And Teresa, you brought up a good point. All of the sessions, our live webinar sessions, are recorded. So if for some reason you can't make it or you have to leave early or you have to come late, the recordings are there for you to do it later. But taking it and doing it in real time is always just a bit more fun.
Mhm.
Did either of you use the discussion feature to connect with other people in the class during your sessions? Did anybody use
I
the discussion?
So I did connect. Just like, hey, I said some stuff and you follow people on Instagram, but not a whole lot of we're not besties, you know what I'm saying? But I did use it. I did use it.
Cool. Yeah, that
I
is another.
personally did not use it that much. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. That is an option to use the discussion feature just to connect outside of the live webinar. So some people just use it for really fun things like sharing your favorite wine movies, or others might, ask more serious questions. But that is another option if you want to have a little bit more interaction. That's great. This has been really awesome. I am looking at the chat to see if there are any questions from our audience. One question that came up, what does Will's shirt say? Will, can you share your shirt?
Sure. It says wine abuse, the act of spilling, leaving, wasting, or spitting out wine.
Ooh,
Nice.
I don't think
that's
this
a
is,
good shirt.
yeah. Usually I have one of your shirts on, but I think this one, who makes this shirt?
I
Nicole? I think Nicole makes this shirt, but
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so one question from Jeannie in the chat says she heard that level two exam is significantly harder than level one. I know we touched on this a little bit, but how would we compare the level one exam and the level two exam, just to go back a little bit? Anybody can jump in here.
Well,
Matt,
I think Teresa. Well, I only took level two. I think either Teresa looks like maybe she's trying to.
what about
Sorry,
you?
my son just walked in from school.
This is real life.
Level
Yeah, right.
level two was the exam. I feel like I took it and it kind of erased a little bit, but there were more questions. Um, they were a little bit more in depth. Like you kind of had to infer some things, and I mean, honestly, it's like you just really need to study the regions, like knowing, like I think it was brought up, like the different weather patterns and then this soil, and know your left and right banks in France, and uh, the different regions, and know that there's wines in Chile, there's wines in Australia, because they will ask like the different types that are there. And it's just way more in depth than the level one.
Absolutely. Will, do you have any comment? Because you took the level one, right?
no, I didn't take
No,
the
you,
level one.
okay. And then Kisa, you're still waiting to take your exam. But I definitely agree with Teresa. I have taken all level one and two as well. And it's just an increased amount of information. The detail is more in depth. So it definitely requires, like all of you have said, that additional commitment to studying and really knowing the flavors that you can expect from each grape, the different regions. Is a huge focus in level two, knowing how the climate and all of that impacts the different regions and what the final wine will taste like. So just more detail. Let me just make sure there aren't any other questions. I'm not seeing any come in, but this was really great. Any last final words that you all have about the course or Napa Valley Wine Academy? Oh, no, we do have one other question. This is a really great question. What would you say was maybe a disadvantage of taking the class online rather than doing it in person? Anybody can hop in.
Hmm.
That's interesting because I personally did not see a quote unquote disadvantage just simply because everyone is sent the same sample. It's not,
Mhm.
there's no different labels that you're having to navigate around. It's like, well, this one, da 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 da. It's like, no, everyone's tasting the exact same thing. If you get on live with everyone, it's streamlined. Like Desiree said, like they ship you everything you need, like maybe 2 weeks prior. Maybe it's not that far in advance. It's about 2 weeks prior.
Mhm.
So, um, and, and I would also say too, like I didn't take level one, but level two, the exam, like if you study, if you prepare, like you're gonna be fine. Like if everything is in the textbook, there's not necessarily a gotcha question. And to my understanding, to my memory, there's not like A, B, C, D, and then E is like, or is it A and B, and D is like, there's no, like, it's just four answers, multiple choice. And I think that's important. I don't know if anyone mentioned it. It's all multiple choice. There's no short answers, no essays. There's no tasting. I think that was touched on. So, yeah, I mean, just go for it. And if you already work in the industry, like most employers will reimburse you. So just bring that up to them first too.
That's awesome. Thank you, Matt. Anybody else? Maybe any disadvantages from taking it online?
I kind of agree with Matt.
Yeah, well,
But
go ahead. Well, I was going to agree with Matt too, because I've never taken one in person. I mean, they look really fun to take them in person. Like to Teresa's point, I would want to do level 3 in person as well. But it was fine for me because I already have a busy schedule, so it works. So I can set up my times. You get to pick that's a good thing. When you do it online, you get to pick which based on the instructor, which time you can take your online courses. And then you get to see the webinar schedule. So because I'm in Georgia, my stuff was always in the evening, and it worked because I could work during the day and get everything taken care of. So for me, it was fine. I didn't see any disadvantages of it.
Thank you all for that. One other question, we touched on this a little bit. This is from the chat, but how long after taking the course did you wait to take the exam? Kisa, I want to start with you because I know you haven't taken your exam yet. So how long has it been since you finished the course, and when are you planning to take the exam? And maybe also talk us through maybe why you waited and what you're doing in the meantime.
Okay, so I think the course finished in November, December last year. I know it's a long time. Y'all don't shame me on this thing. I see the faces. But it was a lot of life changes that happened, and I knew I couldn't really just hammer down and study when the course is over and then be prepared enough to take it. So I had to wait. I have a 5-year-old, so school was starting. So I said, well, let me just wait before he gets before summer break starts. I said, as long as I take it before summer break, I'm good. So that's why I waited. And during this time, I've literally been studying. I have a real tight schedule on my study habits around my work schedule, and literally only thing going in my brain is wine. And I tell you, I have to limit those chatter conversations because I don't want any wine information to come out. So, so it's just been a lot of studying. So I waited just for my own. I had some other things going on, so I wanted to make sure I was prepared enough. And I'm prepared. I take my course I take the exam next month. Yeah.
Awesome.
Good
Anybody
luck.
else?
Thank
After
you.
so the level 2 course is 5 weeks. And then after the course is over, you do have access to the online wine academy for 12 months. So 1 whole year. So Lisa still has access to everything online as she has waited to take the exam. So that's a really good thing to bring up. I want to hear from maybe a few other of you, maybe 1 or 2 more people about how long you waited after the 5-week course is over to take your exam.
I actually just looked back at my calendar, and I think I took mine 2 weeks after. But like I said earlier, it was like I wanted to get going and make sure I didn't forget what I had just learned in those 5 weeks. And I was able to do it. The best thing that I would say is work with what is in your schedule, because don't do it on anybody else's schedule, because you're going to stress yourself out even more. So if you're comfortable waiting like 3 months because that's how your time is, then wait that time and study, when you can. If you're like me and want to get it done, schedule it. The only thing is that you got to schedule it during the class when it kind of comes out. If that's one of the steps when you're going through, when you first log in, it gives you the opportunity to schedule your exam. Because I noticed I went in and looked, and there were dates, and then when I actually went to okay, I want to choose my dates, the earlier ones were already gone. So it kind of also becomes a default of what's available.
Yep.
Just because it's an online exam doesn't mean you get to take it anytime you want to. There are set times that you have to do it. So I would say just whatever works for you, because everybody is different.
I think that was a perfect answer. Anybody else want to chime in on that? I think Teresa did a great job. Any other thoughts?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the same. I kind of went in last minute, and some of the earlier ones were already taken. So I think I ended up being pushed out about 6 weeks after the course. But it ended up being a good thing because I had a lot of extra time to study and kind of really hone in on it. So I'm glad that I had that extra time. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to wait a little bit after the course is over to take the exam.
Awesome. So we talked a little bit. I know some of you are considering going to level 3, but has anybody considered taking any of the other WSET paths, like spirits? Anybody interested in the spirits courses? This was a question from in the chat.
I've thought about it, but I'm not really sure yet.
Yeah.
But I've thought about it. Like I've read the overview. I'll say that I looked at the overview.
I looked at it as well.
And technically, I sell spirits too, so like it's like a more boutique portfolio. So like it could benefit me, but I know it's like wine's my thing. So I'm probably just going to read on my own and maybe not do a certification course. Wanting to do level 3, it's kind of it's one of those timeline things too, where it's like okay, where anyways. It's kind of echoing what everyone else has said, but kind of doing it on your own terms and when it fits your schedule. But hopefully by the end of the year, taking level 3, that's kind of a goal.
What about you, Sarita? You said you kind of looked at the spirits. What are your thoughts there?
I looked at it, but it's kind of the same as Matt. I like wine. I don't usually drink a lot of spirits, so it's kind of what I'm interested in. I don't necessarily need it for my job, but I was interested a little bit on it because other people, my friends and stuff like that, it'd be kind of cool to learn like the different things so that I could become like a little mixologist, even if I don't really drink all of them. But I just didn't do it. I was like, you know what, I'm going to focus on the wine right now.
Awesome. Well, this has been really amazing. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Before we end, I just want to thank you all so much. Kisa, Will, Matt, and Teresa. You all have been really awesome. Thank you for being super candid about your experience taking WSET Level 2. I really appreciate your time. This has been awesome. And I will talk to you all soon. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye. Guys.